So I think I'd heard of this somewhere before, like barely on the grapevine somewhere, where I passed it off as nothing mentally. But fast forward in random day, I'm at like a Barnes and Nobles. I'm looking in the F section, uh, and I find this. It's not even labeled with an F. Like there. It's. I guess it does have Fate Grand Order, but it's like Chaldea Scrapbook, so it stands out immediately, as opposed to Fate Grand Order, the title there. I didn't even know this was localized. I barely knew it existed in the first place, and then it turns out it got localized. And you know what? I kind of think it's peak. So I covered earlier, or maybe I think it's last year on this channel, called what I would consider the predecessor of Chaldea Scrapbook. It's called From Lost Belts, where it's just a collection of short stories, usually about the cryptors. I don't think these are by the same authors, because this is by multiple authors actually. But it definitely sort of functions the same way, where it's just these series of short stories that better flesh out characters, and even some ideas that you see in the main story. And this was kind of for FGO Part 1 what From Lost Belt is for FGO Part 2. But it was a much more limited run than From Lost Belt. From Lost Belt got, like, it only just wrapped up, and it's been going on for a fair bit. This was a one and done sort of deal. So originally this was released, I believe, to tie into the Babylonia and Solomon chapter releases, but it's hardly tied to that at all, really, with only the first chapter kind of tying into anything. I'd say be careful with that first chapter, though. It does kind of spoil a major event in Solomon, in FGO itself. This is actually why we won't be covering this on Off the Shelf anytime soon, because I do want to keep certain plot twists involving a specific character. Seki, if you're here, please get out of this video. I'd like to keep that under wraps for when I run through with the D&D version, or until Seki reads FGO to that point herself. In some ways, this entire book reminds me of a bit of a simpler era for FGO. The entire cast just felt a little bit tighter. But besides that first chapter, this is still a great value, even if you are just a more general Fate fan. I almost say it's more value if you are a fan of Tight Moon as a whole, with one chapter tying more into Fate Stay Night than anything FGO at all. As far as spoiler-free thoughts go, this is a fantastic book. You should pick it up if you see it at your local bookstore, if you have the money and want to drop for it online. If you're really just a Fate fan in any capacity. I'll go ahead and cover the individual stories here. The first story is called Goodbye Scrap, and it's just a touching backstory for the relationship between Romani and Mash. We've obviously got that a couple times over the years, including the previously mentioned From Lost Belt. But this time, it almost is more of like the core aspect of that relationship and that dynamic. They both possess almost a sibling-like relationship in this story, being more focused, since they're both trying to be more human, if you think about their character arcs. Romani being the, spoiler alert, Solomon, King of Mages, trying to walk as a man, and Mash being her designer baby self, trying to open up to the world more. I actually think in some ways this is a little bit more true to their relationship in part 1 than a lot of later FGO stuff treats it. A lot like From Lost Belt will treat it, because if you've been rereading like I've been rereading part 1 for reasons maybe I'll talk about later, and FGO part 1, they're kind of sassy towards you, or Mash is sassy to Romani. It's interesting to see how that dynamic's changed over the years. The part that gets a little bit spoilerish, and no, very spoilerish, is for the briefest of moments, it actually cuts away to the main character's reaction to Romani's sacrifice. When I read that, I actually started tearing up outside the bookstore I bought it. As someone who deeply misses Romani, oh man, is this one worth reading. It wouldn't surprise me if this short story turned out to be the inspiration behind episode 0 of the Babylonia anime, since that seemed to cover a lot of similar beats. The second short story is a bit more of a humorous one called The Altria Conference. This one is simultaneously goofy and heartwarming. It's just a handful of Artorias. It's currently just a handful of Artorias blissfully unaware of how badly their numbers will eventually inflate, standing at the crash landing site of MHX's ship, if you remember the events of Saber Wars at all. This one is short, but has a particular moment where an older Artoria gets asked a question about something Artoria Lily cherished during her early years. It's a cute chapter that is likely to resonate with anyone who appreciates just how much of Artoria's life we get to see across the Fate franchise. So the next one's called Mash's Battle. I'd say it's one of the 2 weaker chapters for me. I haven't got much to say. It's well drawn and provides one of the few action sequences in this manga. But story-wise, it's just a grinding run in Orleans for Mats to ascend Altera, where Mash just has a moment of wanting to stand on her own and protecting her senpai. It's cute, but mostly unremarkable. And the 4th chapter is titled Madonna Lily's Prayers, and it's another one that's kind of like the Altria conference, except this time it's about the 3 Jeans bonding with each other. This one's interesting, as if this came out when I think it did, Jeanne d'Arc, Alter, Lily Santa was brand new, and I don't think we'd had Summer 3 yet, where their relationship with each other, or the 3 Jeans' relationships with each other, was really fleshed out. So this is kind of just ground zero for that writing, I think. You see the 2 older Jeans sharing their perspectives on life and their death, with Lily acting as her older sister. You also get the older Jeans kind of first time telling Jeanne Alter that they don't have to be enemies and that she actually likes her, even if Alter doesn't always like the OG Jeanne. It's another short and heartwarming story about a meeting of variants. Dreams and Fleeting speaks to me as a huge fan of the Guda Guda interludes, like the interludes in-game. It reminds me a lot of the Okita interlude and the manga adaptation of it, and is just her really grappling with her lack of being able to be there during the final days of the Shinsengumi. It also adapts early parts of the Guda Guda 2 event, bringing us ever closer to having that entire thing adapted in random one-off manga. Honestly, this makes me want to see the whole of the Guda Guda interludes and backstory done as one-shots and compiled together in order to just rip my little heart out. The next one's a bit of an odd one, but it's called Children of the Magi, and it's not at all an FGO story. It's a Fate Stay Night story that seems to act as a previously unseen conversation during the date from the UBW route. It's primarily from Rin's perspective, and is just her kind of appreciating having actual friends in the form of Shiro and Saber after basically cutting herself off from others due to her Magus lifestyle. It's heartwarming and a nice treat to an otherwise FGO-based manga. The next chapter is kind of the other one I would classify as a bit weaker. It's called Dear Master, and this is just one of the female protagonists trying to understand how to deal with the dreams of servants' past lives. I haven't really got much to say other than it's cool to see Waver. It's just kind of a conversation we've seen before in other Fate works, but actually happening with FGO's Master for once. I am fully convinced that the entire manga was written because they wanted to do the final chapter of this. So it's the longest one yet, titled Short Grail So Fall in Love. It's just about everything I wanted from the Emiya assassin character post Excel Zero that I always found odd that they just kind of never touched on, besides him being tsundere with Irisfield Dress of Heaven. Well, it turns out it's here. Basically, Irisfield engages in a moment of bonding with every member of the Emiya family from across the timelines, slowly coming to understand him. Her interactions with the 2 Prisma girls is cute, as they seem to find mutual comfort in each other, even if they aren't the same people they know from their lives. Here we realize that Irisfield seems to have memories of her Fate Zero self, likely due to her being the Grail, but not her Prisma self. Even more fun is that she doesn't even realize her connection to Archer Emiya at first until she's given a chance to see Emiya Alter's memories with Taiga's help, and it nearly breaks her. Now, it's not in this book, but we've seen in the Seraph manga what those memories are, and woof. Long story short, it's the conclusion to Irisfield and Emiya Assassin subplot romance that we never really got post Excel Zero, and as a Fate Zero fanboy, it melted my heart. So overall, I think it's a fantastic manga and a welcome surprise. The release of this in the West, half a decade after the original release, gives me a lot of hope that maybe we'll see other Fate manga, like from Lost Belt, also be brought over as time goes on. But only time will tell. Definitely pick this up, though, if you can find it somewhere. Alright then, yeah, with that, I hope y'all have a good one. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye.